I want to start with a confession. I have been running for 6 years. These days I have a coach, I follow a structured plan, I do strength work, I take the gels, I roll my legs, I use the massage gun, and for the last 2 months my body has been telling me to run slower. Not because it's tired, not because I'm injured, but because the data says this is how you potentially get faster. I want to tell you whether I believe it or not. 3 things before we get into it. First, there's so much that goes behind the scenes in training that not many film. The stuff that takes hours every week and never makes any thumbnail. Second, I'm going to explain why my easy runs are now slower than they have ever been and what the research behind that actually says. Third, I'm going to be honest about what happens when you do all of that and the results still feel a long way off. Let's start with the plan behind the plan. Here is what the week looks like for me right now. Monday, I do easy 40 minutes run. Tuesday, I rest. Wednesdays, normally I cross-train, and this could be treadmill or elliptical, etc., which is effectively a double session disguised as one. On Thursday, I do strength work, and then I cross-train, plus cross-train again. Friday, I normally rest, and on Saturdays, I do my long easy runs, and normally this is the best day of the week. Sunday I do strength. On paper that looks a lot, and in some ways it is, but the number of actual kilometers I am running right now is very low. I don't know if I can say intentionally low, because the priority is not volume. The priority is getting me run pain-free before we build anything else. But here is the thing nobody talks about when they talk about training. The schedule is not the training. The schedule is just the visible bit. The training is the 20 minutes of stretching after every run that nobody is filming. It is the gel I take 30 minutes in the run that I have never once mentioned in a video. It is the massage gun on my calves at 11 at night. It is the foot massage I give myself. Yes, I said that in fact out loud because the physio just said, and in fact it helps. It is the nutrition I have been adjusting for months, years now. The sleep I am trying to protect around the 11-month-old who has no interest in my sleep. And all of that is in the total. None of it is in the thumbnail. This section mirrors the down wall using the same analogy as Damien Talks Money. The down wall is a great documentary about climbing. And in this case, climbing El Capitan in the Yosemite National Park in US. So this is a documentary about one of the greatest climbers in the world, Tommy Caldwell. But the invisible truth work is the one done by Kevin, which is Tommy's climbing friend with him on this journey. What most people see in this documentary is Tommy at the top. They don't see the weeks of pitch 15 done by Kevin, and this is what today's episode is about. In February, I did a VO2 max test and a lactate threshold test. If you saw episode 5, you know what those mean. But if you didn't, a short version. They measure how hard you can push and, more importantly, where your aerobic and anaerobic limits actually sit. Not where you think they sit. And mine came back telling me something I didn't want it to hear. And I had been running what felt like a comfortable pace, a chatty pace, a pace that if someone had asked me, I would have called zone 2. It was not zone 2, it was sitting right in what exercise scientists call the gray zone, and I have been spending a lot of time there. So the coach adjusted the plan. My easy runs are now kept at 135 to 145 beats per minute, which for me is slower than it sounds and slower than it feels. There is something called the 80-20 polarized training. Dr. Steven Siller's research, published across peer-reviewed journals, including the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine and Science in Sport, analyzed training data from elite endurance athletes across multiple sports. His findings were that world-class athletes consistently distribute roughly 80% of training below the lactate threshold, with only 15 to 20% at genuinely high intensity. A 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis in sports medicine confirmed polarized training produced superior improvement in VO2 max and time trial performance compared to threshold heavy across multiple studies. A separate systematic review published in Sports MDPI 2024, drawing on 14 studies from PubMed and Sports Discuss, found that 75 to 80% of low-intensity training combined with 15 to 20% high-intensity work produced the best improvements in VO2 max, VO2 peak, and the running economy in endurance athletes. The logic is this: easy running builds mitochondrial density, the machinery your cells use to produce energy aerobically. It increases capillary networks and improves the body's ability to use fat as fuel, which matters enormously over long distances. You cannot build those things by running at a moderate effort. Moderate effort is the gray zone. It fatigues you without giving you the adaptation you are trying to earn. Run slow to run fast. It is not a slogan. It has a mechanism. But I want to be fair here. A 2022 study on 80-20 endurance training found that lower training volumes, below roughly 25 minutes a day average, the gap between polarized and moderate intensity training narrows significantly. And some researchers argue that the optimal splits vary by athlete training history and phase of the season. So this is not a universal law. It is a principle, and for where I am right now, building an aerobic base ahead of a half marathon, managing body that has had some setbacks at an intensity that keeps me running and not injured, it is the right principle. To this day, running at this heart rate feels genuinely strange. I would look at my watch and think, I used to run this pace as a warm-up, but the watch does not lie, the heart rate does not lie, and the data from February did not lie. And then slowly, something started to shift. The easy run started feeling easier at the same pace, then faster at the same heart rate, which is the whole point. That is the adaptation. Not impressive in a single session, barely visible week on week, but there in the numbers, quietly, if you know what you are looking for, you will find it. And somewhere around week 4 or 5 of genuinely disciplined zone 2 running, I had a long run that felt, and I'm trying to just use the right word here, I would say sustainable. Like I could keep going, not because I was holding back, but because I had actually built something. Was I really? Because other parts of my body started later to fall apart, but not related with the science here explained. 6 years of running, and I am only just now learning how to run easy, properly, right now. Here is the thing about doing all of this right. The stretching, the strength work, the gels, the adjusted paces, the heart rate, discipline, the nutrition, the foam roll late in the evening. Sometimes you do all of it and you still get an injury. Or the test comes back and you are not where you hoped. Or the race doesn't go the way you planned. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system. The runner that compares their training with the people doing sub 3 hour marathons, who film their 200K weeks and their altitude camps and their recovery ice baths. That runner is Kevin looking at Tommy on pitch 15. The gap between them is not laziness. The gap between them is circumstances, time and genetics. And looking at that gap too often will make you worse athlete, not a better one. A 2014 study on competitive motivation found something worth pausing on. When the group we are competing against gets very large, everyone, everywhere, all the time, we actually become less effective competitors. The arena becomes too big, the goal becomes too vague, and you should define the arena. My arena is my half marathon. My benchmark is me. The invisible work I do every week is not behind anyone else, is not behind anyone else's. It is only behind mine. The half marathon is coming. Newport is on the horizon. The training we've built, all of it, visible or invisible, points towards that day. I started this video with a confession. 6 years of running, a coach, a plan, all the invisible work, and my coach telling me to run slower. The confession is not that I did not understand it. The confession is that I resisted it anyway. Because slowness feels like weakness. Because the ego wants always the pace, not the process. But here is what I have learned. The pace you show, the race, the Strava segment, the Sunday long run number, That is the visible bit. It is cabin at the top of the wall. It is the 20%. Everything underneath it, the gels, the massage gun, the single leg squats, the boring discipline, slow kilometers at 140 beats per minute, that is the 80% nobody photographs. That is the thing that actually determines where the 20% works. You can see the summit from here, but you cannot see all the pitches below it. But they are all in the total of whatever you train. So no matter what, go out and run. If this kind of honest running story is what you've been looking for, please subscribe. There's new episodes every week. The half marathon is coming, and if I will be running it or not, that's a completely all another video. And when I know whether I'm running it or not, you'll be the first one to know.